Hey, Storymakers, this is Mel, and this is Jenny from Imani Kids, CEO, founder, mother, author, all sorts of things. And then I realized looking at your bio today again, that you're a doctor. You're really Dr. Jenny. There's so many.
Not the medical doctor, but I am a doctor.
You know, the PhD kind.
Yes, the PhD kind.
Your repertoire is very deep. So I'm really excited to have you today and for our listeners to get to know who you are. And yesterday I had a flubber. I forgot to push record, but guess what? I think God's story is a funny story. And I think it was meant to be because I really got to dig into your book, Let It Be Wild. And there's so much there for Storymakers. And I want you all to buy the book. You need the book. So anyway, but to get us started, we'll start with Jenny's story. And we'd love to hear a little bit about you because God is in the details of all of our lives. And you have one of the most interesting and incredible, surprising stories that I've ever encountered. So we'd love to hear about your beginnings, wherever you want to start, Jenny.
Yeah, no, awesome. I won't give you the hour-long version. If you want that, you can buy the book, Let It Be Wild, but I'll give you kind of the nutshell. But my name is Jenny, and I'm the founder and CEO of Imani Collective, and we started as a nonprofit and a training program. So it's been beautiful to see where we are today. And I know we'll get into some of those details too, but really the start of my journey it started with a short-term mission trip. And I was just having a conversation earlier about the mixed feelings that I have towards short-term. But the reality is it's shaped me to who I am. And it's part of why I'm in Kenya. And so when I went on that trip, I saw a lot of things that were eye-opening. And at the same time, I said, I don't know how I can be used, God. And I went back to the States, and at that time, I was 18 and I went straight into college, and I was like, okay, God, like what's next? And it was an eye-opener for me. I really for the first time saw, a different culture, but also coming from a little bit of privilege too, of, where just the nature of my upbringing, and realizing I took a lot of things for granted. But I would say my story is very interesting because when I compare it to my husband's or a lot of people who are overseas, so I have now been in Kenya for 13 years. I told God on that first trip, I said, I will never go back to Kenya. And here I am. So Yes, I love Kenya. It is, we are residents that are about to be into, dual citizenship. That's like it is home. I am more Kenyan than I am American in a lot of different ways. But my husband's story, a lot of people who you will find overseas, it's like they knew from the very beginning, like, I'm going to do something abroad, or I'm going to do something in missions, or like, I know that's where I need to be. And that was never my story. So I grew up in a home that's like still all in Texas, doing amazing things. And I love my family, but it was never something where it was like, I explored different, again, cultures, or was really open to any of that, or knew any of that. And so when I got the opportunity to do so, I think the Lord just opened this other side of my heart that I just never knew existed. And Kenya really scarred my heart in a good way. In the very beginning, because it never left you never left me. So when I said, okay, God, I'm never going back, he said, and watch this. So I went back in 2010 and 2011 and 2012, and my trips got longer. And so I sold everything and I moved into the village in 2013 to start Imani Collective. And the beauty of that and how we started was it was just out of the purity of relationships, because I think a lot of times we can see people, well, I won't get into that, but it just started out relationships, and it just started out of like, what do you guys want? What do you dream of doing? And what I realized in the beginning is we started with 16 women, and I call them the pioneers of Imani, and we built Imani Collective together. But I realized no one ever asked them that. No one, I grew up in a home that was like, what's your biggest dreams and how are we going to get you there? Right. And no one ever asked them what they wanted. That was not a privilege for them to even think in that way. And most of the women that started in our training program had never stepped foot inside of a classroom. So they had never even learned their numbers or how to write their name, or even believed that they were worthy of that practice and to learn and to be educated. And I truly believe education is the key to transformation, generational transformation and change, and especially education of a woman that will change a community. And so, yeah, that's kind of the nutshell of my origin story of how I even got to Kenya. And we started, like I said, we started as a nonprofit, started as a training program, and then grew into a global social enterprise where we now serve over 110 artisans. We're in 3 different locations and do tons of different skills, from sewing to weaving to leather work to screen printing to ceramics. And we get to partner with a lot of cool people. And it's just been a joy to collaborate and to partner and to really have those as our values as well, and be an open book for people to learn, so people can learn too.
Yeah, so awesome. I mean, I think that one of the things that touched me, looking at the history of Imani in your book, and there's just an open curiosity there, and a seemingly grounding faith there. I think it requires faith, right, to step out into these new spaces and these creative places that you've been brought into. So it's like you started as a ministry, and now it's reiterated into the place that God would have it be. And you all started in 2011, and you've been going at it for the last 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story, it started, like, the whole idea started in 2011, and then the program officially started in 2013. But yeah, we wouldn't be where we are without faith. I think it takes faith, it takes risk, it takes resiliency. Imani means faith in Swahili. It's in our name. It's what we do. And so I wouldn't pull that out of anything of our company. And so even the nature of how we started, right, as a ministry, and we take this holistic approach of caring for our women, right? It's not just creating a skill, it's not just creating work, it's also free childcare and a food programs and supplemental trainings as well, like business trainings and first aid trainings, financial trainings. We have a dream management course. If you've never read the book Dream Manager, it's like a very simple book. It could have been written a little better. I forgot who the author is. It's a very old book, but the concept of it is phenomenal. It's like a 90-page read. And we took that concept of Dream Manager, having someone literally on our staff to ask our team, what are your dreams and how can we get you there, right? And cultivating a culture like that. And so we just want to make sure that we're caring for everyone holistically, also having opportunities to step into Bible studies. We do Vacation Bible School for our kiddos, and we do that in outreach. And so it's not just what we do internally in our workshop. We also do a lot of outreach for our community too. And so as we moved into a business and a hybrid model, none of that changed, right? It was like, our strategy changed and how we approach consumers and how our maybe revenue channels, but the heartbeat of who we are and the foundation of us making every decision out of faith and with the discernment where the Lord's leading us is, that's never changed.
Yeah, for us in Storymaker land, we all have core values, right? Or we have quotes or things that we kind of everything's sort of hinged on or comes out of. And one of the things I love that Roald Dahl said was, when you're writing for kids, forget the whole world. Like, don't think about grownups, don't think about anybody else, but write directly for kids. And one of the mantras, and maybe I'm projecting, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of why not seems to have come from inception to now, right? So all of the things that you've just described and the incredible things that Imani does, I think has to be rooted in that idea of well, why not? Why not? Why can't we feed them? Why can't we educate them? Why can't we be in this place or that place? So I was just curious if you would like to speak to that idea of the why not. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's part, I think it's still on our impacts page or on our about page where we say we're a community of dreamers that always ask why not. You got that. Like, that's exactly who we are. Because I think the world, one, we live in a world that puts us in a box and says we have to act and be this way. The reason why I titled the book Let It Be Wild, which Let It Be Wild is not a social entrepreneurship 101 book. Do not get it to how do I build a business? That's not what it is. It is definitely my testimony of how the Lord pursued me and how I want it to be an encouragement for people to understand that you are a vessel and the Lord can use you in beautiful ways. And you have talents inside you that you only have. And I think I love that you guys create and make for kids, because that's like when I tell people, when's the last time you played or were creative or you just let it be without any anxiety or stress? It's like, well, when we were children, right? And somewhere down the line, we forget how to have creative, imaginative, innovation. Like, I was, again, in a conversation earlier, I was like, I believe everybody's creative, and you can be creative with spreadsheets or you can be an artist. You don't have to like be a painter to say, quote unquote, you're creative, right? I think that definition, and we know we're in the creative space, but that looks different for everybody. And so I think so Let It Be Wild is in that. It's like, I want people to be reminded of, like, when you are completely aligned with who you are made to be, it's going to look wild. And so when Imani Collective has asked all those questions, we, in the sense of running a business for transformation, these business as missions, whatever title we want to put on it, but we're doing things different. It's not just profit, right? We're caring about our people. We're looking at environment. We're looking across the board of how we're partnering and collaborating and making sure all of these things make sense. So we're not just looking at that profit or the bottom line. And I know we've had a lot of conversations like this off the mic and off recording. And I think we need to ask that more. Like, and when I have stepped into business classes and gone through incubators and all these things, that's the thread where we're different. We care about culture, we care about people, and that's going to be, sadly, more expensive. And so when we're looking at our model, it's like, well, how can we make this work? And how long is it going to take? And what does that look like? And as a social impact brand who does care for all these things, it does take longer, and we have to be patient, and we have to have resiliency, because we're not going to be able to, an overnight success. It's going to take a lot of work. And the only way for us to see ourselves from the beginning to the end is if we ask the question, why not? If we challenge the status quo, and if we also always are reminding ourselves to lead with our core values. Because if at any moment that we get off those values and we start aligning ourselves with other people because we want quick fixes or quick revenue or whatever, it's going to come to haunt us in the end, because it's not going to feel great. Like, I can speak from experience of being like, yes, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. And being like, oh yeah, no wonder that didn't work out, because they weren't truly aligned or cared for our whole vision. And so I think anyone in the entrepreneurial space too, listening to this, or anyone who has something purpose-driven needs to continue to ask that, like, what's our why? What's our values? Where do we want to be? And also, what are we willing to take risk on? Because that's that why not. Because you're going to have a lot of naysayers that you're going to have to push through. And in order to push through that, you're going to be facing constant adversity, but so that's where you have to be so grounded in your faith and your values.
Totally. Well, yesterday when I didn't record, you said something really amazing that really stuck with me. And you were talking about your board and the way that you look back in the year. And so, as we're winding down into Q4s, this is always the time when founders are thinking about, like, the next year and what's ahead and how did you perform in the last year. And I thought you had such great wisdom and insight into the looking back and having a perspective around the places that did maybe turn out exactly the way you imagined, or, didn't produce the impact that you thought might happen. And so I thought that was such a great insight in the way that we look back so that we can look forward without feeling totally crushed or discouraged by the places we didn't end up that we thought we might.
Yeah, I don't know exactly all that I said, so that was great. But I think we have to have so much grace on ourselves, right? I think one thing that we mentioned yesterday was, as the visionary and the entrepreneur, we're always trying to mind the gap of whatever we're missing. And so we look for those quick fixes, right? We're like, okay, this is where I can grab revenue. This is where I can grab revenue. And And when we do that, that actually scatters us, it distracts us to what's right in front of us. And so something that I've been trying to practice lately, even in just the last like couple weeks, is like, how are we not spreading so wide, but we're actually looking at how we're getting deeper and creating more stability within what we're doing. But I think we have to look back and see all that we have come from, right? And I don't do that often. My husband always says you need to celebrate more, and I try my best to celebrate and be like, whoa, like, especially if you look even in the decade, right? Whoa, like that's crazy. And when people, I think I had mentioned like, yeah, we had visitors and people from our board and other people come in, and seeing them walk in our workshop was like an eye opener for me, because it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, this is awesome. And I was like, yeah, you're right. This is awesome. This is really cool. Okay, we're doing something. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, we know this, but I think we just forget we're in it. It's so close to our face, and we forget how far we've come. We forget, like, I mean, wow, I started with in our city location, 2 disabled women out of my bedroom, that now we have 7 buildings in Old Town, and, over, I mean, a lot of artisans here and all, and we're growing out of that space. And just in seeing that impact, I'm like, yeah, that's a big thing. But not just that, I always have to remind myself too of, as leaders, we get to lead the culture that we want to cultivate. And the one thing that I love, no matter if they walk in our workshop or they walk in our home, everyone says that there's this immediate peace that they feel that like resonates over their body. And that is only of God. And that is, it's so amazing, because as you know, especially in our home, we have a million boys. My husband has a street youth ministry where we help boys off the street. We have 19 boys in the home. Like, there's just a lot going on. So you walk into our door and there's like all these shoes. There's tons of noise happening everywhere. Kids are running around, and it's chaotic, and it's the beautiful chaos that I live in. And someone walks into that space and says, "Oh my gosh, it's so peaceful." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" But with that, it's like, that shows, the nature of what we can start, what we can represent. But it all starts again with our values, with our faith, and how we lead, and how we celebrate, and how we rest. And our team looks at that, and then, they pass that on. And so we have to do that more. We have to be a little bit more gentle on ourselves. So then that's a good example for the others we work with too.
Totally. I mean, and God's story is such a long story. I'm always trying to remind myself of that. And, I write content from the Bible, and it occurred to me like a month or two ago. It's like, this is for me too, not just for, StoryMakers and that all that's happening. It's like these words and this work and ministry has an impact on my own formation. And it's, I'm constantly being formed, even in the busyness of all the aspects of what we get to do. So I think, we need those moments of clarity. And that's why I think we need the collective and other people to take a look at what we're doing, so that they can help us see that as well. I think that makes a huge difference, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. I think, I mean, we're meant to be in a community. We're meant to, we were made to be in fellowship. And I think when we choose to isolate ourselves from that, that's when, that's when thoughts and mindset and things we get distracted. But when we actually pursue others and have accountability and again, I love living vicariously through people who visit us for the first time or see it. Cause I'm like, I just like being in their shoes, because it reminds me of how I once saw the culture too, or like the surprises, not even just what we do, but just just in what we live in, people seeing it through people's lens is also just so beautiful to like come with that heart posture and to see that. So I think we just have to slow down, and that's also hard for us because we're always wanting, again, like we were saying, I'm already looking at 2024 and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're at the end of the year. Where did the time go? And so how do we stay present but still vision? And that, I think that's always a little bit of the conundrum we live in.
Yeah, that's that dance of, and then trying to discern like what is our intention and what's God's intention. The good thing is,
Right.
it seems that He works it out in the wash. Whether we can't really mess it up too much. So He's
Yeah.
going to use us in the ways that He wants to use us for sure. One of
Yeah.
the things you just mentioned was like the imagination, and for people, it is funny how adults feel that they're not creative if they don't do it professionally, or they're not optimizing or making money off of their creativity somehow. That we, that imagination just kind of wanes or it shifts. I've had this thought about how, because we don't pursue creativity as we grow up older, as we get older, our imagination can kind of shift into this space of imagining kind of the worst case scenario rather than that why not perspective on the positive intent.
Mhm.
And I think that why not holds so much positive and faithful perspective, that why not, like, why couldn't God do the impossible?
Mhm.
And it's, when I hear you say that, it doesn't sound to me like this wild desire just to be like, well, why not? We can get after it. But it's like, why not? Why couldn't God do that thing? Why couldn't God
Mhm.
provide in this way? And so I think that that's super, super encouraging. One of the fun questions we always love to ask, Jenny, what was your favorite story from the Bible as a child?
Oh man, I would say, well, first of all, I don't know why, but David and Goliath has been like, as an adult right now, I feel like I've heard this story for the last 3 months, like every sermon I'm going to, every like retreat I'm going to. But I would say that's naturally like, I think you kind of the underdog or the little one, having the victory. But I would say as a child, it was not that. I love that story, but as a child, it was Noah's Ark, because I think when you look at Noah and just his obedience in the crazy, like,
Yeah.
let's not look, oh, sure, as a child I loved all the animals in the boat and like all of that, whatever that looked like. But I think when you're looking at that story, it's like, wow, he like was doing all of this and he didn't really know, like he was having, again, all this adversity, all these things, all these people saying you're crazy, and he still just obediently built this boat. Like, I know what I'm doing. So I don't know. I think just as an adult looking back, I loved it as a child because just the stories and all the characters, of course, and like stuffies and things, and like being, just as a
Yeah.
kid, I loved, acting that out and all of that in church. But I think when I look as an adult back, I'm like, wow, he had some guts. Like he had some guts to continue to pursue and do this. And when everybody said, yeah, you're absolutely bananas. And he was
I
like, well,
mean,
God told me
it's
to do
it
this. So
does
I'm
seem to require a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. It's like, I have
right.
to make this thing. Everyone that's around me needs to get involved.
Yes.
I
That's
can't do
why
this.
that's why I
Can't do
think
this.
I love it so much.
It's a collaborative project.
Yes, I think that's why I love it so much as an adult. I'm like, yes, this is what I do every day. Like, so it's good. It's good.
Like, we're gonna save the people. We're saving the environment. We're the whole ecosystem. I think that's probably the root of
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Well, the David and Goliath, I just read a devotion about it yesterday. I love
Telling you, it's
Jackie Hill Perry, and she had this great insight on David and Goliath as to when he went to Saul, and like
mm,
he proclaimed like God's glory, not his own glory, in trying to convince him like, I can do this, but not because I've killed lions and bears in my own capacity, but because God has gone before me in all of these scenarios, he's going to go before me in this next scenario. And so I think, yeah, all of these things are so intertwined, these stories
mm.
and how God works. And it's really on brand. He
It
doesn't
is on
really
brand.
divert from what he does. So, and how he uses and
Yeah.
works through our lives. So,
I have a
um,
little sign that says God's starting point is the impossible. And I think that's like the nature of all these stories and our story and God's story as a whole. It's like when I look back 12 years ago and I'm like, wow, that all that we've done, like then, I mean, seemed impossible. Even leaving and doing like what seems so little, in the grand scheme of things, like in those moments seem so big and impossible. And God is, just like, watch me, like, we're going to make it happen. Like, it's going to happen. So yeah, I love that. It just reminds me every day, you're right. His starting point is impossible, and we just have to trust the process in that.
Totally. I love that. I know it always makes me think of like Hannah and like the midwives and all of these incredible characters in the Bible that point us back to that impossible space that he starts from.
Yeah.
So I think, if you were to leave our people with a thought about the impossible and the why not and stepping out, I know you've shared so many wonderful nuggets of wisdom. What would you say, what would you say to young Jenny getting started if you could go back and give her a little encouragement?
Oh, yes. I would say, I think it goes to the title of my book, Let It Be Wild, because wild, and I will, if you hear me on other podcasts or things, I will sound like a broken record because this is just like my motto of my life, that Psalm 18:19 is my life verse. And it says, the Lord brings me out into a spacious place and he rescues me because he's delighted in me. And in that moment, when I was 17, I was on a backpacking trip and I was on the Colorado mountains, and I was going through brush or whatever. And I ended up in this valley that was on top of mountains on mountains. And it literally made this verse come to life because I was in the middle. It was only me and God. And it's as if he welcomed me into this space. And he said, held my face and said, I am so proud of you. Because in where I was in that spot of life is, I had just a lot of, read the book, it's in the book, a lot of things happening where I just did not feel worthy of his love. And I think, we are his beautiful creation. He will always delight in us. It's like a potter looking down at, our creation and our clay and saying, wow, I delight in that. I'm so proud of that. And so I think for me, as I've grown older, and especially in my story, wild was always crazy, because when I moved, wild was a negative thing. It was like, oh, Jenny's the wild one. Maybe one day she'll stop being wild and come back to Texas and actually start her life. Maybe one day that wild hobby of hers will, which by the way, people called it a hobby 2 years ago. And I'm like, I don't think you guys understand. I'm running a very successful business, but okay.
Not just in Kenya, across the globe.
Yeah, all over. So I think just, but I was the wild.
I want a hobby like that.
It took me a while to really break that down and be like, wow, wild is not crazy. That's what they believe, but wild is not crazy, is not reckless. It is when you are perfectly aligned with what you were made to be. And guess what? We are not called to be of this world. We're called to be out of it. And we're going to be in it. We're in it, but we're not a part of it. Right. In the sense of, if you are perfectly aligned with where God has you and wants you, and you push into that, the world is going to think that's wild, and it's going to look crazy, and it's not going to make sense. But it's going to be in perfect alignment, and you're going to be misunderstood. And that used to bother me when I just felt so misunderstood. And I just realized that, wow, that's my secret sauce. That's my special power, to be misunderstood, because that means God is using me in the exact ways that he wants to use me. And no one on earth is going to understand that but him. Right. And so I think just push into that and let it be wild. Find the values that you want to align yourself with, and rub shoulders with more people like that, and get in a community that supports and loves you and pushes you into what you were always made to be. So it's my encouragement to all of you.
Yes, I love that. Well, and in God's story is not a safe story.
No.
when you get involved, it's when you get involved with Christianity and Jesus, it doesn't mean that there's a very specific straight and narrow outcome, and things are going to fall in the line in a lineup that you think are due, or the way that it ought to be. It's God's story, and his story is wild.
It is
unpredictable, full of surprises, and so imaginative beyond our measures. So
we're both very much on brand. As of all of you who are listening, stay on brand.
Stay on brand. Well, we're super excited because back here, sorry, it's like a mirror. We have a project that's coming your way. We're doing something with Imani. We care about kids and their feelings and identifying them. And so I think this is going to be such a great way. This is one of the, I mean, you all create so many wonderful things and you help facilitate other people's dreams and their call that they've been given by God. And so we can't wait for you guys to see this roll out here pretty soon.
So excited.
Well, Jenny, it's been such a great pleasure to have you. And, you know, it's just, I'm always excited to connect because I love a wild mind. I love someone who's ready to go for it. So, but anyway, everybody get the book, get excited, get encouraged, and be assured of the promises that God has for you, because they may not look the way you think they're supposed to look. They're going to look the way that God intended. And Jenny, you're just such an inspiration of that. So lots of love and peace, and get the book, and we will catch you all soon.
Awesome.